I was saving her life. Then I saw the chart. The father of her baby was my husband. My hands were still buzzing, you know? That low-frequency vibration you get after a marathon surgery, after you've held someone's life in your palms and refused to let it go. I had just stabilized her heart. Her name was Chloe. She was young, terrified, and 8 months pregnant when they wheeled her in, bleeding and crashing. A complex cardiac intervention just to get her stable enough for the emergency C-section. We did it. We saved her. We saved the baby. I was exhausted, but I was proud. That's who I am. Dr. Maya Blackwell. The woman people in Chicago call when things seem impossible. You build a life on that. On being the one who fixes things. My life was pristine. The penthouse overlooking the lake, the 12-hour shifts, the respect, and Marcus. My charming, handsome husband, the entrepreneur. He was my rock, or so I thought. He'd been weird for weeks, glued to his phone, whispering about a new investment. He always told me, "Maya, you just focus on saving the world. I'll take care of our world." I trusted him. I was too busy replacing heart valves to double-check the bank statements, but after saving Chloe, I went to sign off on her chart. Just routine paperwork. And I saw it. The box labeled emergency contact and father of the child. It wasn't just a name. It was his name. Marcus Blackwell. My address. My phone number. The blood just left. It drained right out of me onto that sterile hospital floor. The investment. The secretive calls. A sudden, massive charge from a jewelry store last week he'd brushed off as a bank error. It wasn't an error. It was a push present. He wasn't just cheating. He was building an entire second family with my money. This isn't just a story about infidelity. This is the story of how I performed a miracle on the woman who was secretly ruining my life, and how I used that same surgical precision to dissect his. This is going to be messy, and honestly, I could use someone to tell it to. If you want to hear how it all ends, stick around. You'll want to be here for the next part. You know that feeling. That sudden, stomach-dropping lurch, like when you miss a step in the dark. Imagine that, but it doesn't stop. It just keeps dropping. That was me, standing in the middle of the cardiac ICU, the fluorescent lights humming, that stupid, flimsy piece of paper in my hand. Marcus Blackwell, father of the child. My hand was shaking, not the exhausted buzz from before, but a real, violent tremor. I'm a surgeon. My hands do not shake. But I looked at them, and it felt like they belonged to someone else. The world just tilted. Every sound in the unit became unbearably loud. The rhythmic beep of the monitor in Chloe's room, the squeak of a nurse's sneakers down the hall, my own breathing, suddenly ragged in my ears. I could smell the antiseptic, a scent I've lived with for a decade, but it suddenly smelled like rot. I looked through the glass at her. Chloe. The woman whose heart I had just held, literally. She was sleeping. The baby was fine, whisked away to the NICU, a tiny, perfect thing, and all I could think about was that jewelry charge. It was 2 weeks ago. I was scrolling through our joint account on my phone before bed. A rare night off. I saw it. Mignot's fine jewelry, $18,000. My heart did a little flip. Our anniversary was coming up. I remember I smiled. I closed the app, deciding to forget I saw it, to let him surprise me. But a week later, I asked him about some other transfer, and I mentioned it. "Oh, by the way, what was that Mignot's charge? Did you get me something shiny?" I remember exactly what he did. He laughed. That easy, charming laugh that used to make my knees weak. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, kissing my neck. He told me it was a bank error. His exact words. "It's a complete nightmare, babe. They charged the wrong account. I've been on the phone with Amex all day." He told me not to worry my pretty genius head about it, that he was handling it. He made me feel, I don't know, almost silly for asking, like I was meddling. I was the surgeon, the breadwinner. He was the entrepreneur. He handled the boring stuff. That was our arrangement. Standing there, outside Chloe's room, I realized the lie. It wasn't just that he lied, it was how. It was so smooth, so practiced, so easy. He hadn't even flinched. And then the first crack became a spiderweb. The late-night calls. He'd always step onto the balcony even when it was freezing. "It's my new investor," he'd say. "He's in a different time zone, totally demanding." The new investor. Was that what he called her? The stress he was under? I'd rub his shoulders, telling him to take a break, while he was probably texting her about baby names. And the money. Oh God, the money. He'd been diversifying our portfolio, moving large sums around. He told me he was putting it into a high-yield tech fund. My stomach clenched. I am not a stupid woman. I am a brilliant woman. I can literally restart a human heart. But I had let this man, my husband, pat me on the head and tell me not to worry about the boring stuff. I looked back at Chloe. She was just a kid. Did she know about me? Was she a victim too? Or was she a predator? Did she know that the man whose baby she just had was married to the doctor who just saved her life? The irony was so thick, I felt like I was choking on it. I saved her. I did my job. My oath. But as I stood there, the exhaustion of the 12-hour surgery combined with the shock, and something new started to curdle in my gut. It wasn't sadness. Not yet. It was colder. It was a terrifying, laser-sharp clarity. The same focus I get when I'm standing over an open chest. I had been blind. Willfully, stupidly blind. I'd been so focused on my own success, I'd ignored the gaping wound right in the middle of my own life. I thought Marcus was my biggest supporter, but I was wrong. I wasn't his partner, I was his bank. I was the mark. And in that moment, the grief hadn't fully hit. All I felt was this cold, hard, sickening realization. The life I thought I had, it wasn't real. It was a stage, and I was the only one who didn't know the play. My innocence didn't just crack, it shattered. I drove home from the hospital just before dawn. The city was gray, the lake was a sheet of steel. I kept seeing his name on that chart. Marcus Blackwell. I parked in our garage in my designated spot and went up in the elevator to our penthouse. Our penthouse? The one I paid the mortgage on. When the elevator doors opened, I could smell him. His cologne, that expensive sandalwood scent he always wore. It was lingering in the air like a ghost. The apartment was silent. He was still at the hospital. With her. With them. I walked past our bedroom, the unmade bed, my scrubs from yesterday tossed on a chair. I didn't feel like crying. I didn't feel like sleeping. I felt nothing. Just a cold, hollow space where my trust used to be. I am a surgeon. When a patient is crashing, you don't panic, you don't cry, you assess, you diagnose. You find the bleed, and you stop it. My life was bleeding out. I went straight to his study, the room he called Mission Control. The room I rarely entered. It was pristine, minimalist, expensive. He was always so organized. He sat in that chair, a $5 azillion ergonomic monstrosity, and he would tell me, "Go to bed, Maya. I'm just closing a deal." I always thought he was working so hard for us. I sat in his chair. It was still warm from his body heat, or maybe I imagined it. I turned on his desktop computer. I knew his password, or I thought I did. It was our anniversary. I typed it in. Access denied. I tried my birthday. Access denied. His birthday. Access denied. A cold laugh bubbled in my throat. Of course. Why would it be us? I thought about the chart. Chloe. I typed in Chloe. Nothing. Then I remembered the baby. The C-section. I knew the date. It was yesterday. I typed in that date. MDY. The screen unlocked. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was like a physical blow. He had changed all his passwords to the birthday of his new child. The desktop was clean, except for one folder. It wasn't labeled Finances or Investments. It was labeled The New Leaf. I clicked it. It wasn't a tech fund. It wasn't stocks. It was a life. Her life. I saw the receipts. The $18,000 for the jewelry. It was listed. See push present. That's what the memo said. Push present. There were invoices for baby furniture, a lease agreement for a luxury SUV in her name, but linked to our joint account. And then I saw the deed. He hadn't just gotten her a place to stay. He had bought her a condo. A gorgeous 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, paid in cash, $500,000. My $500,000. The money I'd been saving for my own clinic. The money from 24-hour shifts, from missed holidays, from a decade of grinding. I thought I was going to be sick. I gripped the edge of the desk, the cold marble, the expensive wood. I had paid for all of it. I had paid for my own destruction. But the final file was the one that stopped my heart. It wasn't a receipt. It was a Word document. Post-nup draft V3. I opened it. It was a post-nuptial agreement he'd been drafting with a lawyer I didn't know. It was designed to separate his new assets from our marital property. It cited my demanding career and long hours as the reason he had to take full control of certain financial ventures to secure their future. It was legal jargon for theft. He was walling off the condo, the car, the money he'd funneled into a business account for her, a lifestyle boutique. He wasn't just having an affair. This was an exit strategy. A meticulous, calculated plan to drain me dry, secure his new life. And then, what? Divorce me? Leave me with the shell of a life while he started fresh? He hadn't just been lying. He'd been planning. He'd been building a new life, brick by stolen brick, right under my nose. I was sitting in the very room where he'd plotted the whole thing. And the most twisted part, the one part he could never have planned for, I had just saved the life of his co-conspirator. I sat there in his $1,000 chair staring at the screen. Post-nup draft V3, version 3. This wasn't a fleeting angry thought. This was a project. He'd put work into this, the same way I put work into a difficult aortic valve replacement. Meticulous, patient, thorough. I felt disconnected. Like I was floating above my own body, watching myself click through the files. This was just his computer. This was just the plan. I needed to see the damage. I'm a surgeon. I don't just look at the x-ray, I look at the surgical field. I need to see the bleed. I minimized the Word doc and opened a browser. I went to our financial institution, the one I've used since medical school. The one he consolidated all our accounts into 2 years ago. He said it was simpler that way. Let me handle the stress, Maya. You just be brilliant. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still. I typed in my login, my salary, the direct deposits from the hospital. They all went into the joint checking. I looked at it. It was fine. Healthy, even. My last paycheck was there. Of course it was. He needed me to keep working. The goose had to keep laying the golden eggs. Then I clicked on the investments tab. This was my nest egg, my walk-away fund, the money my parents left me, combined with a decade of aggressive saving. This was my dream. The Blackwell Cardiac Clinic. My own space, on my own terms. Marcus knew what that account meant to me. He called it Maya's Big Dream and promised he was growing it for me. I clicked it. The page loaded, and I didn't understand. The balance was $1,400 and some change. I blinked. I thought it was a glitch. I refreshed the page. $1,400, I felt the blood rush to my head. I thought I might faint. $1,400, there was supposed to be almost $2 million in that account. I frantically clicked on Activity. Statements. My heart was hammering, a panicked, messy rhythm. Tachycardia. I was having it myself. I saw the transfers. They were systematic. One every month for the last 8 months. $200 sound dollars. $300 SARS. $150,000. Not to a person, not to Chloe. They were all transferred to an entity I'd never heard of. Blackwell Innovations, LLC. What is Blackwell Innovations? My mind was racing. I went back to his email. The inbox was still open. I typed Blackwell Innovations into his search bar, and that's when the floor didn't just drop. It evaporated. The emails weren't just from Marcus. They were to Marcus, from Steve Miller, our accountant for a decade, the man who came to our Christmas parties, the man who patted my arm and told me I was smart to let Marcus handle the portfolio. The emails were a chain, starting 9 months ago. Marcus approaching Steve, asking for advice on asset protection. Steve, in polite, professional terms, laying out the exact steps to create a holding company. An LLC, how to fund it from the joint portfolio in a way that minimizes tax exposure for the LLC's sole managing partner. Marcus, Steve, our accountant. He helped him do it. He watched me, smiled at me, drank my expensive wine, all while helping my husband methodically, legally, steal my entire future. He didn't just know, he was an accomplice. The post-nup agreement wasn't the plan. It was the backup. The real plan was this. He'd already stolen the money. He'd funneled my entire net worth into a corporate entity that was solely in his name. The condo in Lincoln Park, the SUV, the push present, that was just pocket change. This was the main event. He was going to wait for the baby to be a few months old probably. Then he'd serve me with the post-nup, which I would obviously fight. But it wouldn't matter. Because while I was fighting in divorce court over the future assets, the past assets, my money would be long gone, shielded, hidden behind a corporate wall that our own accountant had helped him build. He was planning to leave me with the penthouse and the massive mortgage that was in my name, and my salary. He was going to strand me. He was going to leave me, the top surgeon in my field, technically bankrupt, while he and Chloe and their new baby started their new leaf with my $9 million. The coldness I felt in the hospital, that was just shock. This was different. This was the bottom, the absolute lightless bottom of the well. He didn't just betray me with another woman. He didn't just steal from me. He saw my life, my work, my dream, and he decided it was all his for the taking. He had been killing me softly for months, and I had been too busy, too trusting, too stupid to even notice the bleed. I sat back in his chair. The sadness, the nausea, the shock. It all just receded, it evaporated, and what was left, it wasn't grief, it was steel. He didn't just break my heart. He woke me up. He thinks I'm just a workhorse. He thinks I'm the boring wife who just pays the bills. He forgot who I am. I'm the one who stands in a sterile room for 12 hours and doesn't flinch. I'm the one who makes 100 life or death decisions before lunch. He thinks he's the predator. He's forgotten what I do for a living. I cut the sickness out. And he's the disease. I didn't sleep. I don't know if I even blinked. I just sat there in his study as the sun came up over the lake, painting the sky in sickeningly beautiful shades of pink and orange. I forwarded every single email from Steve, every bank statement, the new leaf folder, the post-nup draft. I sent it all to a new encrypted email account I created, one he knew nothing about. Then, I deep deleted every trace of my activity from his computer. I made myself a pot of coffee, the strong black kind I drink before a marathon surgery. I took a shower. I scrubbed his scent off me until my skin was raw. I got dressed in a fresh set of scrubs for my shift. When I heard his key in the door, my heart didn't leap. It didn't sink. It just beat. Steady. Surgical. He walked in, looking like a man who'd been through a war. His hair was a mess. His expensive shirt was rumpled. He looked exhausted. And I realized with a jolt of ice water, he looked happy. That's what hurt the most. He was beaming, even through the exhaustion. Maya, he sighed, dropping his keys on the marble countertop. God, what a night. I just looked at him, holding my coffee mug. Everything okay with the investment? He ran his hands through his hair, laughing that tired, relieved laugh. Oh, babe, you have no idea. He walked over, tried to wrap his arms around me. I didn't pull away. I just stood there. I let him. It was like holding a stranger. I think he felt it, because he pulled back a little, looking confused. You okay? He asked. You feel tense. Just tired, I said. My voice was calm, measured. Long shift, we had a really complicated cardiac case come in. Went late. Oh, he said, his interest already gone. Well, it's done, the deal. It's finally done. He was practically vibrating. The new venture. It's finally launched. God, it's a really healthy new start. Healthy, I repeated. The word felt like acid on my tongue. That's good, Marcus. I'm glad it. Launched successfully. Yeah, me too. He finally poured his own coffee, his back to me. He was rambling now, high on his success. Just so many last-minute details. The paperwork, the partners, just making sure everything is secure. He set his phone on the counter, screen up, right next to me. He was so confident, so sure of my ignorance. He took a sip of coffee, sighing in relief. And as he did, the screen lit up. It was a text message. Not from Chloe. It was from Steve, our accountant. I saw his name. I saw the preview of the text. My heart didn't pound. It just stopped. It read, "Congratulations on the new arrival, Marcus. Glad she's healthy. The fund is 100% secure and transferred. Ready for phase 2 when you are." He didn't see it. He was rubbing his eyes, yawning. "I think I'm gonna sleep for a week," he said, turning around. I just looked at him. I hadn't moved. "Phase 2? I asked, my voice perfectly neutral. He froze. His eyes darted from my face. Down to his phone, he saw the text. The blood drained from his face. He lunged for the phone, fumbling with it, but it was too late. I'd seen it. He knew I'd seen it. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out as a strangled cough. "That's just Steve. You know, we have stages of the investment. It's just business jargon." I nodded. Slowly. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just looked at him. Looked through him. He thought I was just the workhorse. He thought I was the naive, tired wife. He didn't realize that in that single moment, he and his accomplice hadn't just given me a slip of the tongue. They had just confirmed the conspiracy. They had just handed me the scalpel. "Get some rest, Marcus," I said, my voice as cold and sharp as a number 10 blade. "You've earned it." I watched him walk into our bedroom, his shoulders slumped in what I now knew was fake exhaustion, and I felt nothing. No pity, no regret, just a profound, chilling emptiness. I picked up my coffee mug, rinsed it in the sink, put it in the dishwasher. I picked up my purse. I picked up my keys. I walked out of the penthouse. I didn't look back. I didn't go to the hospital. Not yet. I drove, aimlessly at first, just watching the city wake up, the commuters, the delivery trucks, all these people living their normal lives. I felt like I was watching them from behind a thick wall of glass. I ended up in a 24-hour diner in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. The coffee was terrible, burned and bitter. It was perfect. I sat in a cracked vinyl booth, the smell of old grease in the air. I took out my phone. I had one call to make. My best friend, Tessa. We've known each other since undergrad. She went to Wharton while I went to med school. She's a forensic accountant, a shark. She finds numbers that don't want to be found. I called her. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just told her, "It's Marcus. I'm sending you everything. Find the bleed." There was a heavy pause, the kind that only a true friend gives. Not pity, but preparation. I hit send on the encrypted email. The new Leaf folder, the bank statements, the deed, the post-nup, the text from Steve. I put Blackwell Innovations LLC in the subject line. For the next 2 hours, I just sat there. I watched the traffic. I drank the terrible coffee. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket over and over. "Marcus, where are you? Maya, what's going on? You just left?" I ignored them all. I was diagnosing. I was waiting for the test results. My phone rang. Tessa. I picked up. And the truth. The truth was so much worse than a condo and a baby. Tessa told me to just listen. Her voice wasn't the one I knew. It was the cold, flat voice of the professional killer she was. She confirmed it. He wasn't just a bastard, he was an artist. And Steve Miller, our accountant, he was the co-conspirator. He'd helped him structure the entire theft, advising him on how to minimize tax exposure while he liquidated my future. But that wasn't the twist. That wasn't the part that made my vision go dark at the edges. She told me Chloe was the sideshow, a distraction, the condo, the car, the jewelry. That was less than 10% of what he'd moved. He'd been buying time. Time for what? Tessa had found the real target. She'd followed the money from my accounts into Blackwell Innovations, and then out. The LLC had one major asset, a purchase agreement. She told me the name, the Lakefront Surgical Group. My blood just stopped. It turned to ice. Lakefront, the small, elite private cardiac clinic I've been trying to join. The one I've had 3 dinners with. The one I told Marcus. Oh God, I told him it was my dream, my one goal, the only place that could give me the career I'd always wanted. He wasn't joining it. Tessa's research was definitive. The final papers were signed yesterday. He was buying it. He used my entire nest egg, my $1. $9 million as the down payment and first round of funding. He wasn't building a new life with Chloe. He was stealing mine. The realization was a physical blow. He was going to let me apply. He was going to let me get in. And then he was going to reveal himself, the owner, my boss. He wasn't just trying to leave me. He was trying to own me, to humiliate me, to turn my one passion, the one thing I had that was mine, into just another one of his assets. I hung up the phone. I didn't throw it. I didn't scream. I just placed it very gently on the greasy Formica tabletop. He was going to be my boss. He, Marcus, the man who couldn't balance a checkbook without help. The man whose ventures always mysteriously failed, requiring a cash infusion from our joint account. He was going to own the Lakefront Surgical Group. My dream. I finally understood. This wasn't just theft. It was an erasure. He didn't just want my money. He wanted my life. He saw my talent, my name, my reputation, the things I had built with my own 2 hands, with sleepless nights and 36-hour shifts. And he decided he wanted to be the one to own it. He couldn't be me, so he decided to buy me. I paid the bill for the coffee with a $20 bill, left the change on the table, and walked out into the sunlight. It felt too bright. I put on my sunglasses. When I got to the hospital, I was late for the first time in my career. I walked past the nurse's station. "Dr. Blackwell," one of them started, "your 9 o'clock is—" I just held up a hand. "Reschedule my non-essentials for the next 48 hours. All of them. Page me for emergencies only." I didn't wait for a reply. I went to my office, locked the door, and sat in the dark. My entire life I've had a plan. You get the grades, you get into the top med school, you nail the residency, you become the best, you plan every step. My life was a surgical procedure, precise and controlled. And Marcus. He was a cancer. A malignant, invasive growth I had mistaken for a partner. And you don't negotiate with cancer. You excise it. I spent the next hour on the phone with Tessa. We weren't friends anymore. We were a legal team. She'd already found him. The best divorce attorney in Chicago. A woman known for dissecting high-net-worth frauds. Our first meeting was set for that afternoon. Tessa told me the legal side was already in motion. She'd found the wire transfers from our joint accounts to the LLC. She'd found the communication with Steve, our trader accountant. She had the purchase agreement for the clinic. She said we had enough to light him up, but that wasn't enough for me. A legal battle would be private. It would be months, maybe years, of filings and depositions, all hidden behind closed doors. He would just move on. He'd have the clinic, he'd have his new life, and I'd be fighting for scraps of my own money. No. He wanted to be a public figure. He wanted to be the visionary. He wanted the status of being the man who owned the Lakefront Surgical Group. He wanted to impress the city, the medical community, the very community I was a part of. He wanted a stage. I said, "Tessa, what's his next move? He just bought the clinic. He's not going to be quiet." I heard her clicking. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping. "Oh, you're right. He's not. He's a narcissist." "What did you find?" "He's throwing himself a party tomorrow night, an introductory gala. It's at the clinic's atrium." She read me the invitation she'd found on the clinic's public-facing site. "A cocktail reception to welcome new visionary and owner Marcus Blackwell. He's invited the hospital boards, key donors, the surgical department heads. Maya, he's invited. Everyone." My heart went perfectly still. Tomorrow night. He was going to stand in that atrium. He was going to drink champagne and give a speech about his vision for the future of cardiac care, all funded with my stolen money. He was going to be surrounded by my colleagues, my mentors, the people I've operated beside for a decade. He was counting on me being the quiet, supportive, absent wife, the busy surgeon, stuck in a 12-hour case, as he would probably tell everyone with a sad, charming smile. He had just handed me the scalpel. He'd handed me the entire operating theater. He'd even invited the audience. "Tessa," I said, my voice coming out in a low, steady tone I hardly recognized. "Get me on that list." He thinks this party is his coronation. He has no idea it's his autopsy, the day of the gala. I didn't go to work. I called in, claiming a migraine, something I've never done. I needed the space. I spent the morning at Tessa's office. We weren't just a surgeon and an accountant, we were a war room. She had every document, every wire transfer, every email compiled into a set of pristine, identical binders. She'd also arranged for a gift to be delivered to the party. I went back to the penthouse in the afternoon. He was there. He was in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling mirror in our bedroom, the one he'd insisted on, practicing his speech. He was already in his tuxedo. A new one. Tom Ford. He looked victorious. He was glowing, preening, radiating that slick, narcissistic energy. He was so high on his own supply, he barely registered me. He just assumed I was there to... what? Help him with his cufflinks. He smiled at me in the reflection. That old, easy smile. He told me he was so glad I felt better, and that tonight was... well, tonight was just the beginning. He said he wished I could be there, but he understood if I was still feeling under the weather. He was inviting me to be absent, to be the sick, tired wife. I just nodded. I told him I wouldn't miss it for the world. The surprise that flashed across his face was delicious. It was a tiny crack in his perfect facade. He hadn't actually wanted me there, but he recovered, of course. He told me that was great, babe, and that it was so important to him that I see this. I went to my closet. I chose the dress, not something soft or supportive, something sharp. A sheath dress the color of dried blood. Armor. While I was doing my makeup, my hand perfectly steady, like I was drawing an incision line, he was in the living room, taking calls. I could hear his muffled voice, that deep, charming rumble. Then the tone changed. I glanced from the mirror through the bedroom door. He was on the balcony, his back to me, his secret call spot. But he wasn't calm. He was pacing. His shoulders were up by his ears. He was jabbing his finger in the air, hissing into the phone. I couldn't hear the words, just the raw, frustrated energy. It was her. It had to be Chloe. The new mother, in her new condo, probably wondering where her next check was. Or why he wasn't there. He was handling a problem. He came back inside, yanking his bow tie loose, his face flushed. He was muttering about loose ends and bad timing. He poured himself a whiskey, his hand shaking slightly. He drank it in one go, and then his phone, sitting on the marble bar, buzzed. A text. He didn't look at it, but I did. The screen lit up. A preview. It was from Steve. "This gala is a mistake. We need to talk. Now." Marcus lunged for the phone, grabbing it so fast he nearly knocked over the glass. He read the text. The color, the confidence, the victory. It all just vanished from his face. He looked, for the first time, terrified. He started typing back, a frantic two-thumbed scramble. He was sweating in his $10,000 tuxedo. I turned back to the mirror. I applied my lipstick. I finally understood. He'd built this entire house of cards on my money and my reputation. And now, the two people he'd built it with, the mistress and the accomplice, they were starting to panic. The mistress was demanding. The accomplice was getting cold feet, realizing that a public party was the last place a fraud should be. The alliance wasn't just weak, it was rotten. And he was just the fool who was about to light a match in a room full of gasoline. I snapped the lipstick shut. It sounded like a locking mechanism. I was ready. He thought tonight was his coronation. He had no idea I was the one who had just sharpened the guillotine. We walked into the atrium, and the air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and self-congratulation. It was a sea of my peers, my colleagues, people I'd stood shoulder to shoulder with in 12-hour surgeries. And tonight, they were all here to celebrate the man who had robbed me. Marcus was electric. The fear I'd seen earlier was gone, replaced by a manic, bright-eyed charm. He'd seen the crowd, and the narcissist in him had taken over. He grabbed a glass of champagne, his hand shaking, and immediately dove into the crowd, laughing, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. He was performing. I saw him clap Dr. Harrison, my old mentor, on the back. Harrison, the man who taught me how to suture an aorta. I saw Harrison look at Marcus with respect. And then he saw me, trailing behind. He smiled, a kind, condescending smile. The kind you give the supportive wife. It was clear what he was thinking. So glad you're here to support your brilliant husband. My stomach turned. To them, I wasn't Dr. Blackwell, one of the top surgeons in the city. I was just the wife, the +1 to the real visionary. I saw Steve, our accountant. He was in a corner by the bar, looking pale, drinking a whiskey, fast. His eyes met mine across the room. I didn't look away. I just stared. I held his gaze until he, the traitor, was the one who had to break contact, turning back to his drink like a coward. Marcus was checking his phone every 30 seconds, pacing, waiting for a call, a text, maybe from Chloe, wondering where he was, maybe from Steve, trying to stop this train wreck. He was a man spinning plates, and I could hear the wobble. Then, the moment. The current clinic director, a man I knew was taking a massive buyout, stepped up to the podium. He gave a gushing speech about new blood and bold leadership. He introduced the future of Lakefront Surgical, the visionary, Marcus Blackwell. The applause was polite, but firm. Marcus walked up to the podium, his face flushed with sweat and victory. He straightened his Tom Ford bow tie. He tapped the microphone. He started his speech. He talked about synergy. He talked about a new paradigm in patient-first care. He was using my words from conversations we'd had late at night, words from my dreams, my ambitions. He was standing on a stage built from my money, reading from a script stolen from my mind. Then he smiled, that camera-ready smile, and pointed right at me. He told the crowd he couldn't have done it without my brilliant, supportive wife, Dr. Maya Blackwell, my rock. The spotlight swung and hit me. Every eye in the room turned. I just smiled. This was it. As he was winding up for his big finish, I saw them. 2 men dressed in plain, dark suits entered the atrium. They were not guests. They were from the legal courier service Tessa had hired. They walked quietly to Dr. Harrison and to the clinic director and to 2 other members of the board. They each handed them a thick, spiral-bound binder. Marcus didn't see. He was too busy looking at his own reflection in the glass behind the podium. He was just saying, "And as my first act as owner." That's when I moved. I didn't run. I walked. I walked right up to the side of the podium. The room went quiet. He saw me. His smile froze. That manic energy vanished, replaced by a sudden cold panic. He started to hiss my name. "Maya, what are you doing?" I took the second microphone. I could feel the cold metal in my palm. "He's right," I said. My voice didn't shake. It was perfectly clear, amplified throughout the silent room. My husband is a visionary. I turned to the crowd. He envisioned a life where he could take $1.9 million from my personal investment accounts, the money I earned, the money my parents left me, and use it as a down payment to buy this clinic. A single, collective gasp. Marcus was ghost white. He was whispering, "Stop, Maya, stop! You're hysterical!" He envisioned a new family. I continued, my voice cutting through the silence. With his mistress, Chloe, a woman whose life I personally saved with an emergency cardiac procedure less than 48 hours ago. It was a success. The baby, his baby, is healthy too. The room was dead. Not a cough. Not a clinking glass. I saw Dr. Harrison frantically tearing open the binder. And he had help. I pointed, my hand steady, right at the bar. From our accountant, Steve Miller. He helped him create the shell company, Blackwell Innovations, to hide the theft. I looked at Harrison. In those binders, which my forensic accountant prepared, you will find every wire transfer, every email from Mr. Miller, every bank statement, and the deed to the $500,000 condo he bought his mistress. Using my money. I turned back to Marcus. His mouth was open. The charm, the suit, the victory, it all just fell away. He was just a small, terrified man. "So yes," I said into the microphone, "he is a visionary, but he forgot one thing." I looked at him. I saw the man I'd loved, and I felt nothing. He forgot who I am. I placed the microphone back on the stand. The soft thud echoed like a gunshot. Silence. Utter, deafening silence. Every eye in the room was on him. Not me. Him. I turned. And I walked out. I didn't look back. I just left him there, alone on his stage, drowning in the spotlight. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I didn't need to. I walked out of that atrium, past the silent, stunned valets, and into the cold Chicago night. The air hit my lungs, and it was the first clean breath I'd taken in. God, maybe years. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. It was that feeling after a 24-hour shift when you've done everything you can and you're just empty. The fallout was nuclear, but I only heard about it in echoes. Tessa told me the party cleared out in under 3 minutes, not with shouting, but with a quiet, horrified rush for the doors. Dr. Harrison, my old mentor, didn't even speak to Marcus. He just looked at him. Then he folded the binder under his arm and was the first one to leave. The Lakefront Surgical Group voided the purchase agreement the next morning, citing the fraudulent funds clause Tessa had made sure was front and center in their binders. Steve, the accountant, his firm fired him by 10 a.m. Tessa had already filed a formal complaint with the Illinois Board of Examiners. His career was over. Just gone. And Marcus. He was locked out of the Blackwell Innovations account by noon. The bank, alerted by my new legal team, had frozen everything pending a criminal investigation. The divorce was brutal and fast. I had the receipts, I had the emails, I had the text messages. He didn't just lose, he was exposed. Without my money to pay his army of slick lawyers, he was just a man in a rumpled tuxedo with nothing. I never saw Chloe again. I have no idea what happened to her, or the baby. I heard, through the legal grapevine, that once the money was frozen, once my money was frozen, she just disappeared. She was just another person caught in the blast radius of his ambition. The last I heard, someone told me they'd seen him, not in a penthouse, not at a gala. He was working at a car dealership out in Naperville, living in his mother's basement. The visionary was gone. As for me, I couldn't stay at the hospital. I couldn't walk those halls, seeing the pity in my colleagues' eyes, the whispers, even the "I'm so proud of you" felt dirty. I resigned. I sold the penthouse. I sold the furniture. I sold the cars. I sold every last thing that his hands had touched. And I left. I took 6 months. I went to Greece. I went to Bali. I went to places where no one knew Dr. Blackwell. I just sat on beaches. I read books that had nothing to do with medicine. I learned how to breathe again. And I had my final realization, the final twist. I thought my wound was the money he stole. I thought the betrayal was the affair. I was wrong. My wound was that I had let myself become the +1 in my own life. I had let him pat me on the head and tell me to focus on saving lives while he handled everything else. I had let him dim my light so he could shine. The betrayal wasn't that he left me, it's that I had almost let him erase me. The victory wasn't watching him burn. The victory was realizing I was the fire. I came back to Chicago 6 months ago. I didn't buy a penthouse. I didn't join a clinic. I built one, from the ground up. The Blackwell Cardiac Institute. It's 100% mine. My name is on the door in etched glass. Sometimes, you have to do the surgery on your own life. You have to cut out the disease, cleanly and completely, so you can save what's left. I saved his mistress, yes, but then I saved myself. This was a hard story to tell. It's been sitting in my chest for a long time, but saying it out loud, it feels like the last stitch is finally in place. Thank you for listening. It's been like talking to a friend. I'd love to know who was out there, on the other side of this. Let me know in the comments what city you're listening from, and if you want to hear more stories about finding your own strength, maybe subscribe. I'm just getting started.